Should I go ahead and read the introduction?
Why don't we give it a couple of minutes, see if anyone does show up?
Okay, just
Maybe
let me know
start at
when.
11:03.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Ross Miller with the Indiana Commission for Higher Education. Introduction. Join us for an overview of the IB individuals and societies, humanities, and social studies. Participants will receive an in-depth information about IB curricula and assessments and have the opportunity to ask questions to support their evaluations of the IB coursework. This session is designed for individuals and societies, faculty of humanities and social studies. Our presenter, Marie Vivas, has extensive knowledge of the IB diploma program from several perspectives: IB teacher, college counselor in IB schools, director of admissions at Jacobs University, Bremen, and as the university relations manager of the IB Americas region. For over a decade, Marie has worked closely with university faculty, admissions leaders, and academic affairs officers on establishing IB credit policies and equivalencies. And with that, I'll turn it over to Marie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marie Vivas, and I am the Senior Recognition Manager for the US and Canada for the IB. And today I'm going to share with you a recording that we made for this particular purpose for the Ohio Commission of Higher Education, and they have kindly agreed to share it with us. I will start with a sort of an IB 101 in the recording, an introduction to IB, and then it moves directly into the group three subjects, uh, individuals and societies, what we refer to as humanities and the social sciences. So without further ado, I will share my screen and get us started.
Everyone. My name is Marie Vivas, and I am the Senior Recognition Manager for the US and Canada. So my work is to support universities as they try to learn more about the IB and how that how to welcome students with IB, give credit, have IB recognition policies. And I'm happy to be here today with my colleague Alejandro, who will be discussing the group three subjects, which are, it's called individuals and society, and that loosely translates into the social sciences and the humanities. Well, before we start, I'm just going to do a brief introduction of the IB before I turn it over to Alejandro. So the IB started back in the late 60s in Europe. It was designed for students who had a lot of mobility, diplomatic families, NGO, business families who were moving frequently between countries. And the idea was to create a high school credential that would allow students to be able to either go to a different country for university or return to a home country and have their high school diploma be accepted. That was at the core of it. Of course, in other ways, it was also very much a group of educators that was concerned with conflicts around the world. This is post-war Europe. It's the Cold War. So the idea of educating young people to overcome barriers, linguistic barriers, cultural barriers, national barriers, to be able to work together to create a more peaceful world was top of mind for them at that point in history, and that is baked into everything that the IB does. So one of the things that really distinguishes IB from many other curricula is the fact that we actually are trying to nurture certain traits in students to 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 help them become world citizens and be able to come together in those ways that I discussed earlier. So to the left here, you will see our learner profile. The learner profile is sort of the sort of 10 traits that we're trying to nurture in all of our students across all of our programs. We're asking them to be inquirers, knowledgeable, thinkers, communicators, principled, open-minded, caring, risk-takers, balanced, and reflective. And as we reflected on these things, because IB does require a lot of reflection, um, I was moved to see how that translates into learning for the 21st century. These are on the right side are the skills for the partnership from the Partnership for 21st Century Learning. And you will see a lot of things that really resonate with IB. So the interdisciplinary nature of how IB approaches the subjects, as well as this whole concept of global awareness, civic and environmental literacy, being at the forefront of how do students approach and solve the big questions that we're going to be asked to deal with over the next decades. Learning and innovation, very much at the core of what IB does, nurturing creativity, critical thinking, and communication skills. Again, emphasizing how do we work across cultures, but also how do we think critically? How do we encourage students to take the creative leap, but grounded in that critical thinking work? Information skills more and more important as the pace of information and the types of information proliferate greatly. So informational skills, literacy, information literacy, media literacy, and technology literacy tied in together to that Again, how do we think critically about these things? And lastly, life and career skills, flexibility and adaptability, initiative and self-direction, these being very important for students who are moving from secondary to university education, their self-management skills, their ability to organize themselves, to be able to pivot to the challenges presenting in a different learning milieu are important not just at the university level, but for life in general. And then, of course, those social and cross-cultural skills that are very much at the core of the IB. Where is IB? Interestingly enough, of course, it is across the world in all three of the major world regions. As you can see, we do have four programs: a primary years program for ages 3 to 11, the middle years program for ages 12 to 15, and then the diploma and the career-related program for ages 16 and up. And as you can see, the US is actually the largest IB market in the world by far, and many diploma programs. The other thing I want to point out here is the mix is about fairly even between public and private institutions. And in the state of Ohio, of course, we will be talking predominantly about public institutions. And so that brings me to this slide. The question is of access and equity in the IB. So with all about 2,000 schools at this point represented in the US, 89% of which are public schools. And of those public schools, 62% are Title I schools. This is very reflective of what happens in the state of Ohio as well. Many of your students are coming from public schools, the vast majority of them, and the vast majority are also in Title I schools. So these are traditionally underserved students for whom the question of credit becomes an important way to mitigate affordability and access to university. So we are talking about two different points that are extremely important in this process that we're doing. One, making it more affordable for underserved students, and two, encouraging them in high school to take the more challenging courses that will better prepare them to thrive in the university setting. So we do have three options for students in that 16 to 9 age group. The full diploma program, and you will see a lot of students with this, are students who have taken 6 diploma subjects, the extended essay, theory of knowledge, and the co-curricular CAS. We also have the career-related program, which is a hybrid of career and technical education with IB courses and an IB core of their own. And then you will see a lot of this in the state of Ohio. Students that are coming with 1 or 2 or 3 subjects that are taking this in combination with other options offered in their high school. So they may have some regular high school courses or some honors courses. They may have some AP courses, and they will have some IB courses. So those kinds of combinations where students are able to be more modular about it are fairly common in U.S. public schools. And so you will be seeing a lot of students who will bring this configuration as well. I want to very quickly just share a little bit about the two programs themselves. The IB Diploma program is our flagship program. This is the one that had its first cohort in 1968. As you can see in the middle, the IB Learner Profile is at the center of it. It's very much student-centered learning. So I approaches to teaching and approaches to learning because we train teachers in IB pedagogy, but we're also asking students to help and take responsibility for their learning, kind of become partners in that process. So how they learn is part of what they are learning. We go to the next circle and you have the core. So you have theory of knowledge, which is an IB course. In this course, students are dealing with the questions about what is knowledge, how to think about it critically, how to write about it, how to apply it ethically. And those questions, those deep questions are then applied across the 6 academic disciplines. And this is an IB course graded by IB, fairly heavy on writing and presentation skills as well. The extended essay is a 4,000-word research paper. Students can choose any IB subject of their choice. This is an important component of what we call the core. And then CAS, creativity, activity, service, the co-curricular activities where we do ask students to keep a journal and reflect on what they're learning and what it means for them. Now, before we get into the 6 subjects, I do want to speak a little bit because today we're spending a lot of time chatting about standard level subjects. We do have higher level subjects and standard level subjects. Higher level subjects have excellent recognition across the state of Ohio already. Most of your universities are giving credit for them. Many of your universities already have equivalences for them. This is why we've chosen to focus on standard level. But I wanted just to share a little bit about the difference between the two. As I mentioned earlier, the IB started in Europe, and they were trying to make sure that the credential would allow entry into European universities. In Europe, most universities do not have a freshman year per se. Students are going directly into the major. There are no liberal arts requirements as a general rule. So these courses, and most high schools in Europe, students will take 3, maximum 4 courses that are very much focused on the degree that students are going to get. So think of these courses, the higher level courses, as sort of the courses that would be in a major. But being that this was an international education, we wanted students to be well-rounded. So the standard level courses, which are very rigorous courses equivalent to an AP course or a sort of freshman introductory course in many cases, were created to round it out for students, to create that rounded out student. So if you think about it, the higher level courses are sort of your major courses, and your standard level courses are sort of your liberal arts requirements. And that's the difference between higher and standard level. The students must take they must take 3 courses at the higher level, again, those that are specializing, and 3 courses at the standard level. We have studies in language and literature, group 1. That is the course for native speakers, the course of the language course that's equivalent to a freshman composition course. It is that course that is either in the language of the school or the language of the country, or the language that the student is most academically competent in. Then we have language acquisition, group 2, which is for language learners. These are students who are still learning the language, and there are different levels of that course. Today we're going to speak about individuals and societies. Again, as I said, this loosely translates into the social sciences and the humanities, and I'm not going to say more because Alejandra will have a lot more information on that. Group 4 is the sciences, group 5 is mathematics, and group 6 is the arts. So students take 3 and 3, complete the core, and that is how they will receive their diploma. And for those of you who would rather have this in writing, I do have this slide here which shares what the DP requirements are, and we can, when you get the slides, you will have this available to you as well. Moving on then to the career-related program. As I said, this whole program is a hybrid that combines technical skills, employability skills, and academic skills. We do this by combining 3 different types of learning. We do have the academic skills represented through the IB diploma courses. These students are taking in their school the same courses that the DP students are taking. They are being assessed in the same way. They are taking the same exam. So when you see these courses on a CP transcript, just know that they're exactly the same course with the same exam that students around the world are taking. Students must take a minimum of 2. We know from our own research that students are traditionally taking 3 to 4 courses, but this is a place where a lot of those underserved students may be taking standard level courses. Again, that's another reason to really think about how we grant credit at the standard level. Then we have the employability skills. Again, the academic and employability skills are managed by the IB. So if you look at the core here, you have the personal and professional skills. That is a course where we work with students on how to communicate, how to collaborate, how to present themselves in the world. And this is a very hands-on writing course, presentation course that really prepares them for the next level, whether it's career or university studies. Service learning. In a career pathway, the students will have chosen a career pathway that they want to focus on. So the service learning will be tied to that, as well as the reflective project. The reflective project, much like the extended essay, is a 3,000-word research paper on an ethical concern that is in their career pathway. And then language development, because we may not be requiring language as part of the courses that they take, but all IB credentials do require a language experience. And so this can be done by taking language courses, by following, there are 5 or 6 different ways in which IB allows this to happen. And then you have the career-related studies, so those technical skills. The career pathway is chosen by the school will provide any number of career pathways that students can take. In the United States, that is traditionally done through the career and technical education portion of the school. So say a student is doing a pre-engineering program and they may choose to do IB Math, IB Physics, and they're doing their pre-engineering career pathway, and then everything else will relate to that. That is administered by the school. We require the school to show us that there has been completion of that program, but that grade is given by the school. What IB grades are the components of the core and the diploma courses. But this allows those students who really have a passion, who are very pointy, let's say, and know what they want, to be able to focus in on a career pathway earlier on. Again, the requirements for those of us who like to read are here, and they will be available as part of the slide presentation when we release it to you. And just one more thing that I wanted to share before I turn it over to Alejandro is that we did partner with the American Council on Education this year to have them review our standard level courses and make credit recommendations for those courses. And I'm very excited to say that in July, ACE published their results. These are available on their website. That is the link on this page. And they have recommended for IB scores of 4 or higher, a minimum of 3 semester hours of credit for the IB subjects that were reviewed. We reviewed the most popular ones. And so this is actually, I think, a good starting point for faculty as they evaluate the courses. Some of this work has already been done. You may be able to use this as a jumping off point. And the nice thing is that the ACE website also has some equivalences to sort of general name courses that they recommend as equivalences for different IB courses. So hopefully this will be very helpful to you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alejandro for
Very
him
much.
to begin.
Thank you very much, Marie. Welcome, everyone. My name is Alejandro Moreno. You can call me Alex, and I've been working with the IB for 3 years, and I'm a curriculum manager, mainly for global politics and digital society. But together with my colleagues, I oversee a lot of what happens in the Group 3 individual societies. And before joining the IB, I was an IB educator for 10 years. I did school visits, workshops. So maybe needless to say, but I'm a firm believer, and I've worked in many roles with the IB as an external and both internal. So in today's presentation, this is what we're going to cover. We're going to go through a lot of small blocks so that hopefully they are easier to process. There's going to be a lot of information. Don't worry, there's a space at the end of the session for questions. But if you have anything really specific about a slide, that maybe there's a term or a label or something that we might understand differently, feel free to maybe, I don't know if you have access to the chat or to make questions synchronously, but if it's anything about a specific slide, just feel free to jump in or put it in the chat, and otherwise we can probably go back to those. So as I mentioned, the agenda for today, am I able to control the slides? I don't think so, right? Yeah. So we're going to introduce the subject group, and we're going to focus, of course, in 4 subjects, but we're going to talk about a little bit of the general framing for the subject group. What are some of the development principles when we're doing curriculum? What are the shared aims of the subject groups? Even if all of the subjects in the group are quite different in the content and in the disciplinary fields, they do have shared aims, as well as some increasingly common curriculum frameworks to make this transition simpler. As Mary mentioned, all students have to take one subject at least of individuals and societies, so we have to ensure certain commonalities. So regardless of what a student decides to take or what the school decides to offer, so that they can be prepared to a certain extent. Then we're going to focus most of the session, I think, on similarities and differences between standard level and higher level, and what that means for subjects. So basically for history, for economics, for business management, and for psychology. And finally, we're going to talk about assessment across the subject group. And finally, we'll have a space for questions. So let's start with the curriculum development principles. I'm going to try not to repeat what Maria already went through, but just so you know, this is a full offer within the subject group of individuals and societies. So we have business management, digital society, economics, environmental systems and society, which is an interdisciplinary subject, geography, global politics, history. We also have philosophy, and this is why I think the comparison with social sciences and humanities is appropriate, because philosophy might be in a discussion whether everyone would consider it a social science or not. We have psychology, social and cultural anthropology, and world religions. But as mentioned in the session, we're going to focus on those four: business management, economics, history, and psychology. I don't know if I don't think all of them are showing. Yes. Okay. And so we move on to the development principles for designing curriculum at the IB. This is going to match what Marie was mentioning on the IB learner profile, and especially I think with the match on 21st century skills. Regardless of what subject we're speaking about, an IB, it is intended that IB curriculum is broad and balanced. So there is a mix between being exposed to diverse content, but also having a balance between the specificity needed in a disciplinary field, but also on the options offered. It is conceptual based for learning. It is connected, meaning students should be able to link what they're learning in one subject to what they're learning in the other subject groups, and especially with what they're doing in the core. So for their extended essay, for their CAS portfolio, or for their theory of knowledge component. And it is guided by assessment. On the right, you basically have some of our approaches to learning, which match, I think, a lot with the 21st century skills. Teaching in the IB, well, in all IB programs, but currently we're speaking about the diploma program, is designed to remove barriers for learning. So basically to find those diversity that students might need, depending on their learning style, on their choices, for a career path, or on their personal experience. Teaching is based on inquiry. Most of what we try to design is built around inquiry-based learning. So having the student at the center and their interests and questions as always the starting point. Teaching is developed on local and global contexts, so understanding that while we want to foster this global and international mindedness, we also want students to focus on the local issues on their national contexts. Teaching is focused on conceptual understanding. That this is where the connections across subjects becomes increasingly important. More than I think we're increasingly trying to reduce the weight of the content and focus more on students being guided by conceptual understanding. Teaching is focused on effective teamwork and collaboration, which again brings us back to the 21st century skills mentioned. And finally, teaching is informed by assessment, which is something that we believe that throughout formative and summative assessment, teaching should adapt regularly to it. And now moving on to the subject group specific. Um, these are the shared aims for the subject group. So regardless of whether a student is taking psychology or world religions or global politics or economics, the individual and society subjects are aimed to help young people develop a connection to our shared planet, exploring how we live sustainably, and promoting the well-being of all people in our pursuit of a more peaceful world. So these four are what any of the subjects in the group should aim for young people to be equipped with. So explore and critically engage with multiple perspectives and way of thinking. You will see that in most of our assessments, emphasis is made on students not only presenting one side of the story, but trying to find those multiple perspectives that ultimately that at some point may agree, but in many cases will actually even have opposite views. Second, investigate and evaluate the interactions between individuals and societies. Third, think and act as informed and principled individuals in societies, different or actually in addition to what most subjects try to promote. Um, in disciplinary studies. I think especially in individual societies, we try to emphasize the importance of students' positionality and principles in when studying the subjects. And finally, understand and value the variety and diversity of the human experience across time and space. So these are the shared aims that all of the subjects in the subject group have. And as part of that, we've also started building um, shared curriculum frameworks that you will see in different ways in a lot of the subjects. One of the main one is a combination of concepts, context, and content. And in some, you will see skills at the center. So this basically means that we're increasingly seeing in all of these subjects a set of key concepts that guide most of the syllabus, a set of content which is subject specific, and for example, a set of context which can go from the political, economical, technological, cultural. In other subjects, context will refer more to individual, group, national, global experiences. And finally, developing a set of skills. So whether we're looking at the curriculum for history or social and cultural anthropology or business management, you will find some of these shared frameworks. One of the great advantages of this has been that when students are doing two subjects, for example, from the same group, or when teachers are teaching more than one of these subjects, it is easier for them rather than starting from zero or to basically look at completely different curriculum. And that just fosters conceptual understanding in a much easier way for high school students. Now, talking about the difference between standard level and higher level, this is a general overview. The main difference in logistical terms is that the SL course are have to have 150 hours of instructional time, while a higher level course requires 240 hours of instructional time. So the main difference in terms of logistics is that HL students require 90 additional hours. As Mary mentioned, the choice for which courses are taken at a higher level might depend on the career path that they intend to follow, the offerings of the school, the previous knowledge that they might have, and also the choices of subjects. Um, so both SL and HL students share 150 hours of instructional time, meaning this should not be viewed as two completely separate or excluding courses. But as we will see when we go subject by subject, in most cases, those additional 90 instructional hours are distributed along the syllabus, either as additional units, as additional topics, or in some cases as a complementary portion of the syllabus. But we have a main core, a shared syllabus that applies for both SL and HL students. So in most of these courses that we will talk about, and even those that are not within the scope of the presentation, most of the syllabus content is shared, and in some we have standalone extra topics, as we will see in history, or in others, even within a same unit that is shared for SL and HL, there are one or two topics that are only meant and only HL students are expected to cover them. In all of the courses, SL and HL share most of the external assessments, meaning they will have either two of the external examinations or the papers that they sit down for. They will have one or two common papers, and the internal assessment, which is usually a project, an essay, a historical investigation, a proposal for psychological protocol, for example. Most of the times those will also be shared, or they will have similar components and just a differentiation element. In all of the courses, a standard level and higher level complete the same internal assessment as mentioned, and there's some form of an authentic coursework, and in all of them, it includes research, but that depends on the discipline that we're speaking about. Depending whether it's history or business management or economics, the research will look quite differently. So now we're going to look at the different examples. Before I move to the examples, are there, I don't know if there have been any messages coming across, just to maybe make a pause. Okay. If not, we're going to
No, Alex,
continue.
no messages for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll continue then with the examples. This is the syllabus outline for DP history, and what we can see is the first the two top rows, meaning the prescribed subjects, and then the world history topics, are the same for standard level and higher level students. They devote the same time to each of this, so students need to devote 40 hours for the prescribed subjects. They only choose one of those. And then for the world history topics, they devote 90 hours, both SL and HL. And they usually study 2 out of these world history topics. The differentiation here for HL is those HL options that you see at the bottom, which are in-depth regional studies, where students can study Africa and the Middle East, Americas, Asia and Oceania, or Europe, and then they devote 90 additional hours to those in-depth studies. So here in history, it is set as a separate standalone topic, which of course, in terms of content, it is highly connected, but SL students are not expected to devote those additional 90 hours. The internal assessment, which is a historical investigation, is the same for HL and SL with the same expectations and the same skills targeted. And if we move on to the next subject, which is psychology, we will see some common elements. But for example, if we look at psychology, the syllabus for psychology is divided in a core, basically the core topics that have to be covered, and a set of options, which between the school and the students, they should decide on which one of those they take. For the core topics, you'll notice that SL students have to devote 90 hours, and then HL students have to devote 120 hours. Those additional 30 hours come from specific additional specific topics that are singled out. Here, for example, we have an example where in the biological approach to understanding behavior, there are some topics which are common for SL and HL, such as the relationship between the brain and behavior. But there are others that are only specific for HL students, such as the role of animal research in understanding human behavior. This basically means that SL students are not expected to cover that last bullet. As I think it was included in one of the previous slides, in most of the schools, ASL and HL students will be integrated into the same cohort. And some schools, for example, might include additional instructional time, either weekly or monthly, or having some separate sessions at some point during the school calendar year. But this means that a lot of SL students might take or might learn about those additional topics, but they won't be assessed on them. So that's the main difference of the instructional time. And in the options for psychology, which are basically abnormal psychology, development psychology, health psychology, and psychology of human relationships, here the difference, each of these ones does not have additional HL only topics. But what they have is SL students only study one of the options, and HL students have to study 2. So when they come into the examinations, SL students will only have to answer the questions for one of the options, and HL students will have to choose 2 to answer for. And just like in history, the internal assessment is the same for HL and SL. In psychology, the internal assessment is an experimental study. And so we see that each subject integrates those additional 90 instructional hours in a different way. Also below the core, we have the approaches to researching behavior, and that's where HL students have an additional 40 hours, meaning they have to conduct more in-depth learning about research behavior and research methodologies in psychology, whereas SL students only have to devote 20 hours to that. Now, in economics, we'll have there are 4 units and an internal assessment. Unit 1 is an introductory unit, so it has the same content exactly for HL and SL students. And unit 2, 3, and 4, much like in psychology, it has shared topics that both SL and HL students have to cover, and there are some topics that are specific for HL students. So in the example that you have on top of the slide, Unit 3 is macroeconomics, any topic that's not clarified is common for SL and HL, such as measuring economic activity and illustrating its variations. Both SL and HL students have to learn and be able to be assessed on that. But for example, only HL candidates have to be prepared for macroeconomic objectives. And or in some cases, it is not only topics, but additional calculations, such as in economics of inequality and poverty. There will be some formulas, some additional calculations that only HL students have to be prepared for. This doesn't mean that SL students might not be exposed again to them, but they won't be tested or examined on them. And the internal assessment, like in the two previous subjects, is the same. In the case of economics, the internal assessment is building a portfolio of newspaper extracts, and students comment on them using a set of economic concepts and yeah, just analysis, economical analysis. Then for business management, sorry, we have 5 units, much like in economics. First unit, which is an introductory unit, is the same for SL and HL, and units 2 through 5, units 2 through 4, they have an additional only content. So if in the example, unit 4 is marketing, all of students have to cover marketing planning, but only HL students have to cover sales forecasting. And Unit 5, which is operations management, has the exact same content for HL and SL. This is where we might see a difference between the distribution of hours. And finally, the internal assessment is the same. Again, students have the same expectations, and they conduct the same work, and the same skills are expected to be developed. And finally, speaking about assessment, we have here a summary of the assessment. In the next slide, we have a summary of the assessment for all of these subjects. In all cases, I mean, all of these assessment models are different. What they share in common is that most of them have one of the papers that is exclusive for HL candidates. Paper 1 and 2 are usually common between for SL and HL students. Some of them have, for example, an additional section that only HL students have to respond. And they have a paper 3 that is for HL students, that standard level students do not have to sit down. And all of the IAs are the same for SL and HL students. Now, if we look at the specifications of each of the papers, all of them are different. Paper 1, for example, in history, is a source paper. Students get 4 sources, and then they get questions about those 4 sources. While in business management, it is a case study. So students get a case study, but they're not analyzing it only as a source, like in history. And in psychology, it's most content focused without necessarily bringing additional sources in. Paper 2 is usually extended responses for most of the questions. Economics, for example, does include a lot of data on paper 2. So paper 1 and paper 2 would be the ones that are either completely common, they are the same for SL and HL, or they include some additional content, as in psychology for paper 1, or for example, business management for paper 2, which includes an extension that only HL candidates have to respond to. And in all of these subjects, paper 3 is meant exclusively for HL candidates, either because it focuses on research approaches like psychology, those additional 40 hours that the candidates had to devote, or like in history, because it covers units that SL candidates didn't need to study, or like in economics, where this is a policy paper. So students are expected to make recommendations, but this is only expected of the students that did the course at a higher level. And as mentioned before, for the IAs, it's the same for SL and HL students. So this would be a summary. As we can see, the syllabus is structured in different ways to allocate those additional pieces of content or in-depth skills or approaches that HL students have to follow, especially if they plan on following a career in university in one of those fields. So the expectations for a student that that plans to study economics in university are different from those that, for example, take economics at a standard level that might choose to follow different career paths. So hopefully this has been clear enough, but now we have the section for questions and answers. Well, So I don't know if we have any remaining about the syllabus, about the assessments, about the difference between standard and higher level, or about the subject group in general.
Yes, and thank you, Alejandro. This was great. I also wanted to just put up a couple of slides. These are some resources that are available. In particular, you might be interested in the research that's been done on the diploma program, but also the subject briefs are 2-page descriptions of each subject, and so you can find all the subjects there. Additionally, we have provided Lisa and Jared with the full curricula, the 80-page documents, as well as the examinations for May of 2024, so that you can use that as part of your evaluation process. And then my contact information is available here as well. And so I'm going to stop sharing slides, and so we can
That is a perfect time to stop sharing slides and to see if anyone has any questions. Stephen, you came in a little bit later, but I'm Marie Vivas, and you were just watching a recording that we had made for the state of Ohio. But if you do have questions, I'm happy to answer questions now. I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. I see that you've unmuted yourself. Oh, there we go.
Yes, there we go. I had to get my camera wasn't working. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
No, this was very helpful. I mean, was already familiar. I'm coming from Indiana State University and was asked by our associate provost to attend. This was very helpful as we continue to figure out our articulations. I was already somewhat familiar simply because I have friends who teach in the IB curriculum at various schools, either domestically or internationally. So, but this helped round out and particularly for the individuals and society category. So I don't have any specific questions, just it was helpful.
Excellent. And if you're working with other subject groups, we've been doing this session for all the different subject groups, and I'm sure that the folks at the Indiana CHE will be providing those recordings as well. So you could share them with faculty. The idea is to have a resource which is more in depth and more personal than just looking at the guides.
Yep, sounds good.
We'll have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for coming. And Ross, I think we can close it out for today, I think.
Okay. Thank you
Great,
both.
so
I'll conclude the meeting. Thank you.
thank you. All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.